Coming up today on Afternoon Live, does your family mock you for watching your murder shows? We'll look at the fascination with true crime stories, plus surprising Pacific Northwest wedding trends for 2023, and it's your lucky day. Fun recipes for St. Patrick's Day cocktails. Stay right there. Afternoon Live starts right now. Hello and welcome to Afternoon Live. There's a very wet look from our Unico US Bancorp Tower over downtown Portland. It has not stopped raining all day long, so thank you for joining us, staying inside, and being with us today. I'm Karen Mack, and we've got a great show planned for you. Were you glued to the Murdaugh trial? Did the Idaho College murders keep you up at night? Well, Americans have a fascination with true crime, but is it actually good for us? Here to help us unravel our obsession with true crime stories is psychologist Dr. Leah Katz is with us today. Dr. Leah, always good to have you.
It's so nice to be back. Thanks for having me, Kara.
So true. I mean, we're watching people's tragic stories unravel in front of us, and we just can't stop watching or looking it up or Google searching it, whatever it is.
I know. It's all over. It's in the news, and it's also, if you look at Netflix, and the interesting thing is they're not just there, they're trending. So, you know, there's like the top 10 trending shows, and there's always recently a couple, if not more, true crime stories.
Right.
Yeah.
And why is that?
Yeah, it's so interesting how so many of us are drawn to true crime. I think it's a combination of, I mean, there's a lot of different angles to it, of wanting to understand, you know, like where we're trying to wrap our heads around two things. How could somebody do this? So from the side of the perpetrator, how can someone do something like this, where we're just drawn to really wanting to figure this out? And then the victim side of things. How could this happen to somebody? And there's something protective about that, where we're wanting to try and work through, if I were ever in a situation like that, how would I protect myself?
Yeah, with the Idaho murders happening recently, it's what you talk about with people too. It's like the topic of conversation when you're at dinner or with friends. Everyone knows about it. Why stories like this in particular?
Yeah, those stories, I think, so it's interesting when we look at the different true crime stories and who's drawn to what. I think people who can relate in some ways to the victims are drawn to those stories. So with the Idaho murders, it's such a terrible story. What I see clinically, and I hear, and same thing in socially, but people who have kids who are in college or going off to college. I work with a lot of teenagers who are going off to college or thinking about college, and I think that that's part of, I mean, it was the terrible nature of the story, but I think the people who are more drawn to it are the ones who can relate to the victims and somehow just wanting to understand how could that happen again, and like if I were in a situation like that, how can I protect myself?
And the fear. Right? How much of it is the mystery?
Yeah. What do you mean?
How much of it, as far as us being drawn to it, is the mystery part of it all?
I think there's a piece, like a psychological piece of that, where we could watch something so scary and fear-filled from the comfort of our own homes. You know, so if we go into psychological theory, there's parts of us that are inappropriate and unexpressible, and watching true crime shows, you know, whether it's something that actually happened or even like some horror movies are the same sort of thing, you know, where we can experience it and play it out in our subconscious part of ourselves in a way where we're still safe. So we can access the part of ourselves which normally gets buried and we don't want to pay attention to, and let it come out, and from the comfort and safety of our homes.
Is it good for us?
Yeah. So that's an interesting question, and I don't think there's really conclusive evidence about it, but some true crime, and depending, it's so subjective too, some true crime I don't think is bad for us, but it certainly is important to know your limits. So when is too much? Too much? And I think that that's something that each individual has to ask themselves. And I talk with a lot of people about social media, and this for sure, with what the content that we're consuming as far as TV and everything like that. How are we feeling with the content that we're absorbing? So with true crime, for sure, is my body, to do these checks with yourself, asking yourself, is my body feeling tense and tight? Am I holding my breath? If you're having that sort of reaction to whatever it is you're ingesting, and in this case with true crime, it might be too much. Is it causing sleep disturbance? Are you thinking about it during the day? Is it making you feel paranoid? So there's a definite line that can get crossed and make it something that's not healthy or helpful for us.
What's interesting is we're obsessed with the crime part of it, and then we're obsessed with trials. I mean, all throughout history, we'll watch these trials. Is that about the crime, or is that us wondering if someone can get away with something?
I think it's both. I think it's both. So I think it's wanting to really understand the nature of the crime, but then also understand the judicial system. How does this work, and how does somebody get away with that? I mean, I know one of the shows that I personally watched on Netflix was the Bernie Madoff scandal, and that was a piece of it because I'm from the East Coast, and I knew people who were impacted by that, and just really wanting to understand understand how could he have done something like that, and then how could people have not seen the red flags?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's a big part of it too. It's like how did this all happen? And you want more information. It's like gathering more and more information. What part of this is good for us?
And so that's what I was just going to say, based off of what you're saying, in terms of evolutionary psychology, our brains are wired to protect us and keep us safe. So we're constantly scanning the environment and picking up on threats and danger to keep us safe. So if we're coming at it from that angle, and a lot of people are wanting to understand this, and how can I protect myself and create more situational awareness when I'm, for example, so many terrible crimes that we see happen to women at night or in parks, using that to create the awareness of I'm not going to do that because I need to keep myself safe, and bad things do happen. We don't want to go down the route of anxiety where we overplay the possibility of it happening and the chances of it happening to me, but certainly creating some awareness and safety for ourselves is important.
And at what point do you let your kids into this environment?
Yeah, I mean, it's, as a mom who has younger kids, it's something that, and a preteen, so we grapple with that personally in our own home. I think that it's dependent on your kids. I think that we really do need to protect our kids. So what I said, there's so much stuff and stress going on in their own lives. Why add in more stress from things in the world that they don't need to know about? So I think when your kids cross the bridge and they're hearing about it from friends and at school, that's your clue to start the conversation. Not necessarily have them watch the shows, because I don't think kids need to watch those shows. I don't think it's good for their developing brains, and it can create anxiety, especially with kids who have anxiety. But certainly to talk about it. Have you seen the news, and what are your friends saying, and what are you thinking? Is there anything you want to talk about?
Is it more common in women than men? I only say that because I know my husband is always very curious why I like 2020 so much.
That's so funny. So yeah, actually research shows that women are more interested and do enjoy true crime shows more than men. I think the statistics that I saw were between 50 to 70% of women, of true crime watchers, are women. So it's more than half.
And why, do you think?
I think that it's this idea of conquering your fears. So as women, we tend to be more vulnerable, and we can relate to victim stories, and so really wanting to read and understand and find out what happened and what can I do to protect myself.
So what do I say to my husband, who does not like me watching that?
Well, I think it depends on why he's saying that. But if it's because it's causing you anxiety, that's like the boundary of like, maybe I don't need to watch this as much, but letting him in, like, this is why I'm watching it. That's something I talk about with couples all the time, is the transparency. This is why I'm watching it. This is what it does for me. I know you might think it's crazy, but yeah.
You like your zombie show, so just accept it.
Exactly.
Dr. Leah, thank you. Good to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you too.
Yes, we're going to have more information on Dr. Leah on our website at KATU.com. Don't go away. We'll be right back.